Chapter 1541. The scarlet flames were burning a large black pot, and the surrounding rock walls were scorched black. A few little ghosts were adding firewood to the fire. The pot was dozens of meters in diameter, like a small pond. It was filled with muddy yellow oil, and countless bubbles were churning. At this moment, a big indigo ghost appeared on the pitch-black rock wall. Its ghost claws lifted a person high and threw him into the pot of oil. With a splash, the oil splashed everywhere. There was a sizzling sound, and the oil churned violently. The little ghosts who were cooking the pot fled in panic and accidentally got stained by a bit of oil. They wailed and rolled on the ground as if they were suffering great pain, and their stooped bodies were twisted. The indigo ghost laughed loudly, deriving great pleasure from the painful wails. This was not an ordinary pot of oil, but the little hell of the first level of hell. Ordinary people would die of pain, even if they got stained by a bit of oil. But strangely, he did not hear any screams coming from the pot of oil. He looked down, and his smile froze. The madman who roared at the mirror division and insulted the judge in public was actually swimming in a pot of oil. When Li Qingshan fell into the pot of oil, his expression was awe-inspiring, and he had a fearless spirit of sacrifice for the revolutionary cause. However, the oil around him was boiling violently, but he did not feel the slightest bit of pain. Could it be that I'm numb to the pain? Thus, he spread his arms and swam around in the pot, but, as expected, he did not feel any pain. Although the oil was a little annoying, it was warm and smooth, and a little comfortable. He swam several laps in one go, from the beginning to the end, breaststroke, freestyle, butterfly, and dog paddle. The indigo ghost was dumbfounded, and the little ghosts who were cooking the pot were all dumbfounded. "What are you doing here? Go away. Don't block the way." At this moment, another big red ghost appeared on the rock wall. It impatiently pushed aside the indigo ghost and threw another person into the pot of oil. Li Qingshan smiled when he saw that person. "You're here too." The person who came was the old man who had come with him. As soon as the old man fell into the pot of oil, his expression changed drastically. His entire body was trembling. When he saw Li Qingshan, he gritted his teeth, and his expression was distorted. It was really painful and hateful. He was filled with hatred. Killing intent rose in his heart, and he immediately felt the pain increase. He hurriedly circulated his magic power and focused his mind. He squeezed out a sentence from the gaps of his teeth. You harmed me." It turned out that after Magistrate Lu had interrogated Li Qingshan, next was the old man. He had already prepared a generous gift, so he didn't even need to go up to the mirror of sin. Meng Pu was still in the hall. She looked at him and said, "This is also a poor ghost." He was speechless. How would he dare to tell a ghost immortal who was in a rage, "I was lying to you just now"? As a result, he was escorted onto the mirror of sin by the infernal servants. This move wasn't a big deal. The mirror was covered in thick black fog, and there was almost no light at all. It was obvious that he had sinned heavily in his original world. He was a great devil cultivator whose name shook the world. His favorite hobby was to use living souls to refine magic treasures. Massacring cities and destroying countries was nothing difficult for him, and he was known as the soul-snatching old monster. After he ascended to the mortal realm, he restrained himself a little, but he was definitely not a good person. Magistrate Lu was also at the peak of his anger. With a wave of his pen, he was sent to the 10th level of hell, one level deeper than Li Qingshan. He had bitterness that he couldn't express, and he couldn't give his gift. Being in such a situation, how could he not hate Li Qingshan? "You're such an unreasonable old man. What did I do to harm you?" Li Qingshan's mind changed. He roughly guessed the reason and laughed. "You deserve it." He spread his arms and leaned against the side of the pot of oil. He shouted at the two big ghosts on the rock wall. "What are you two idiots looking at? The oil is too cold." The old man's face turned green, and his face twitched. The two big ghosts were also stunned for a moment, probably because they had never heard of such a request. They shouted at the little ghosts who were cooking the pot, "Light the fire! Light the fire!" The little ghosts who were cooking the pot quickly raised the fire, and the oil in the pot boiled even more violently. Li Qingshan still didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. He then looked at the old man whose face was distorted and body was trembling. "Tsk, you look like fried dough sticks. Are you really in pain? You're not pretending, are you?" I want you to die a horrible death." Li Qingshan laughed out loud. "Aren't we already dying a horrible death now?" The old man was speechless. He loved to extract the souls of his enemies and torture them. But was there a better place to torture a person than hell? "If I kill this brat now, I'll be helping him to free himself. That magistrate Liu will definitely vent his anger on me. Adding one more crime is already a light punishment, but if my cultivation is sealed, then it's all over." He glared at Li Qingshan with eyes that wanted to eat him alive, but there was nothing he could do. The pot of oil became hotter and hotter, and the pain became more and more intense. Then he looked at Li Qingshan, whistling, as if he was taking a bath. The old man instantly felt the pain increase by several times, and he almost couldn't help but scream. He pointed at Li Qingshan and shouted at the two big ghosts, "This is not fair. Why is he fine?" Li Qingshan rested his head on the edge of the pot and looked at the strange blue night sky. "Please add a little more fire. Yes, this is the temperature." He let out a comfortable moan, dipped his head into the oil, and muttered to himself, "Maybe it's because I'm a good person." He had experienced the pain of hell from Gu Yenying, and frankly speaking, it was an unbearable pain that far exceeded the limit of pain he could feel. Logically speaking, now that he was sent to hell, the pain he felt should be even more intense, but he was fine. Judging from the old man's reaction, there was no problem with the pot of oil, so the problem was with him or the sky above him. Looking back at the knowledge of the 6 paths of reincarnation, the Naraka path was the most important part of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It could be said that without hell, there would be no reincarnation. The laws of heaven and earth seemed to have some very mysterious characteristics. Whether it was the Yellow Springs Road that led to countless worlds and countless places, or the bridge of helplessness that could not be distinguished from each other, or even the hometown viewing platform that allowed him to see his hometown in his previous life, they were all incredible and could not be guessed with common sense. He had a vague guess, but even he was not sure. Am I a good person? Yes, of course I'm not a bad person, but he closed his eyes as if he had fallen asleep. On the battlefield of the demon domain, he once led the army to charge, killed countless demon folk, and finally faced the demon god alone. In the world of the 5 regions, he once spread martial arts so that everyone has skills and broke the rule of those sects and aristocratic families. In the world of 9 regions, he once destroyed the world and saved the common people. Am I a good person? The indigo big ghost hurried back to the bright mirror department. Judge Liu was chatting with the 3 ghost immortals. He said, unhappily, "Why did you only report now? How is that kid?" "Your Excellency, that kid. What are you hesitating for? Say it quickly." Reporting to Your Excellency, he fell asleep. Judge Liu doubted his ears. He didn't struggle or beg for mercy. No, he doesn't seem to be in pain at all. Could it be? Judge Liu's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at the mirror of sin as well as the 4 large words born from the heart above. Horseface said solemnly, "That kid is more good than evil." The mirror of sin was just a manifestation of the laws of hell, convenient for Judge Yama to pass judgment. even if it was not a reflection, there was still a distinction between good and evil. Oxhead Apang suddenly recalled that a long, long time ago, when he established the Naraka path, the purpose was born from the heart, and the realm was created from the heart. In the cycle of karma, good and evil were rewarded. His heart brightened. Ha! Despicable villain! Shameless villain! How could he be chosen by the leader? He gained some hope. Mengpa shrieked, "No, we can't let him go." Chapter 1542. The indigo ghost used a steel fork to fish Li Qingshan out of the pot of oil and sent him to the depths of hell to be dealt with. As soon as he got out of the pot of oil, he went up the mountain of knives. Thousands of blades gathered together, gleaming coldly. When Li Qingshan saw this, he smiled and said, "Good place." He let out another long sigh, but he thought of the frenzied flower saber at the end of the road. "Do you know fear now?" The indigo ghost grinned and pushed Li Qingshan towards the mountain of knives. Then he stared with his eyes wide open, only to see Li Qingshan strolling on the mountain of knives with his hands behind his back. He did not look like an evil ghost sent to hell, but more like a tourist on a hike. The thousands of blades could not hurt him at all. The indigo ghost hurried to report. Magistrate Liu was even more furious. He slammed the gavel and said, "Trash." He grabbed a token and smashed it on the indigo ghost's head. "Continue. There's no need to report anymore. If he doesn't suffer, just go to the next level." The indigo ghost picked up the token and turned back to the small hell. He was also extremely angry, but he did not dare to resent a magistrate. He grabbed Li Qingshan and left, saying fiercely, "Kid, do you really think you can escape punishment just because you have done a few good deeds?" Li Qingshan smiled. "As I expected. I didn't expect this hell to be somewhat fair." "Fair?" The indigo ghost smiled cruelly. "I want you to know that this is the most unfair place in the world." Li Qingshan glanced at him and saw the marks on his head and face. "I think you are also an unlucky ghost." The indigo ghost was furious. "Shut up." Then Li Qingshan visited the copper axe hell and the iron tree hell. The copper axe could not hurt him, and the iron tree could not hurt him. In the hunger hell, his stomach was full, and in the thirst hell, his mouth was full. In the black cloud sand hell, there was only a cool breeze. In the dung mud hell, there was only a pool of clear water. The poisonous bees did not sting him, and the poisonous snakes did not pester him. He was not afraid of being cut open, and he was not afraid of being eaten by crows. At first, the indigo ghost's expression became more and more ferocious, but later on, it gradually became more serious, and a trace of respect appeared on its face. After serving in hell for so many years, he had seen countless evil spirits and ghosts. When they were in extreme pain, there were many who cursed the judge, the Een commander, or even the Yama king Ksitigarbha, but they had never seen such a calm prisoner. It was as if he wasn't walking towards the depths of hell, but towards paradise. From start to finish, there was not the slightest bit of hatred or despair. Furthermore, he didn't receive any punishment even though he was in such a deep hell. It was clear that he had accumulated a lot of merit. "Who are you?" Li Qingshan replied smugly. "Is it important?" "Don't be too complacent. Even if they have great merits, don't tell me they don't have any sins." Li Qingshan sighed and said, "My sins are too numerous to list. Even 10,000 deaths cannot atone for it." Under his will, the void-swallowing beast devoured countless worlds, causing countless people to lose their homes and countless living beings to be annihilated. As for the world of the 5 continents, he had allowed everyone to cultivate, but it had also brought about several hundred years of chaos. Countless martial artists and cultivators had appeared out of nowhere, fighting for supremacy in the heavenly sea, bringing about more than just legends. The indigo ghost was stunned and sized him up. He felt that he couldn't see through him. If he was a demonic cultivator who did all kinds of evil, how could he have accumulated so much merit? If what you said is true, then you're finished. If you go deeper into hell, as long as you have a trace of sin, you won't be able to escape punishment. At that time, the deeper the sin, the greater the pain. Unknowingly, his tone was no longer gloating, but rather a little emotional. Isn't that exactly what you want? I have no enmity with you. What do I want? I feel that it's not worth it for you. Your merit is far greater than your sins. You're not on the same side as those damned demonic cultivators and evil spirits. Just pay the money honestly and pass. Why bother? Who said there's no justice here? Don't you have it in your heart? Li Qingshan smiled. If you have this thought, I might spare your life in the future. Spare my life. The indigo ghost laughed loudly. He was already in such a situation. Did he still want to escape from this hell? However, under Li Qingshan's gaze, he gradually could not laugh anymore. Instead, he felt rather terrified. Li Qingshan urged, "Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up." Soon after, they arrived at the 6th level of hell, a small ant-devouring hell. Li Qingshan frowned and began to feel slight pain. Although the pain was not very deep, it was unbearable and made him restless. For some reason, he thought back to his time in Crouching Ox Village. It was not a beautiful childhood, but a time when he was trapped in the body of a child. In a small village, he was often abused by his brother and sister-in-law. He slept in a pile of hay in the cowshed for many years, and he was often bitten by mosquitoes. He could not sleep at all times, and he could only talk to oxen. You know it's painful. Yes, it's very painful. Then you just have to endure it. The indigo ghost sat down in a corner. He had been sent by Magistrate Liu to deal with Li Qingshan. Originally, after being scolded by Magistrate Liu, he vented his anger on Li Qingshan. He was prepared to ruthlessly send him to the depths of hell, but he changed his mind unknowingly. He felt that it was enough to do this task perfunctorily. There was no need to stand up for Liu. Li Qingshan nodded and closed his eyes, silently enduring the biting. He knew very well that the test had just begun. It was already lucky to be able to make it through the first few levels, but that was as far as he could go. There were no good people in front of the mirror of sin, and there was no paradise in the path of hell. Without going through thousands of hardships and suffering, how could he reach the depths of hell and meet that great sage, and then above the 9 heavens and meet Brother Ox? He suspected that the soup of Mengpi actually had the opposite effect. It did not make people forget, but it made people remember. It was 100 times more effective than the water of recollection. In a trance, he was still in the pile of hay in the cowshed, facing oxen with its broken horn. It was looking at him with its moist eyes, silently waiting for him to make a choice. For an ordinary human emperor, the Yang spirit was basically everything. It was the condensation of the soul, spirit, magic power, and cultivation. However, he, who cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods, could simply abandon the Yang spirit and then condense it again in the small world. He could still make a choice. He could choose not to suffer this pain and choose a path. It was not that he did not have a way out. The 5 continents world was his best way out. The 5 continents world had already grown into a super large world. In the near future, it would be able to accommodate existences that had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations. And as the god of the world, as long as he hid in the 5 continents world, he could coexist with heaven and earth. Even immortals could not do anything to him. It was really like take a step back and you can see the world. Everything was there. So why should he suffer in this hell? At this moment, an ant crawled on his eyelid, and he suddenly pinched it. The indigo, great, Ghost thought. Finally can't take it anymore? This was already the 6th level of hell. It was different from the initial mountain of knives and frying pan of oil. It touched upon a deeper level of laws. There was no need for some little ghost to sharpen his knife. The various manifestations were born from the heart, and the realm was created from the heart. These ants could not escape at all. There was no way to kill them all. No matter how they struggled, they would definitely be bitten. Li Qingshan gently released the ant and opened his eyes. Let's continue. What did you say? Let's go to the next level. There's nothing interesting here. Is there something wrong with your head? I appreciate your kind intentions, but let's continue. Li Qingshan's eyes shone, and his expression was stubborn. From the moment he stepped out of Crouching Ox Village, he had made up his mind not to look back. There was no path of retreat to speak of, whether it was a village or a world. Chapter 1543. In the quiet room, Lu Tian felt very troubled. Eldest senior brother had died in his place for no reason. How could he explain this? Could he tell others that eldest senior brother courted death himself and was captured by Oxhead Ah Pang and brought to hell? Others would definitely think that he had used some scheme to make Li Qingshan a scapegoat. He could not bear the crime of murdering eldest senior brother. If Chao Tianjiao heard about this, how could he let him off? Moreover, he had a feeling that if he told her everything, the strange behavior of Oxhead Ah Pang, the vortex of fate that he saw, and the terrifying tribulation of heaven and earth, the outcome would only be worse. He was smart, but at this time he was helpless and did not know what to do. He could only sit opposite Li Qingshan. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly realized that the corners of Li Qingshan's mouth twitched. He frowned and revealed a pained expression. It was as if he had sunk into a nightmare and could not wake up. His body trembled slightly. In the depths of hell, snow flew everywhere. The cold air was oppressive, bones were cold, and teeth could not help but chatter. Countless tall icebergs connected to the ice sky. The sky was filled with frozen clouds, and everything was cold and white. Everywhere was cold and white. However, in the green and white glacier, there were countless red shadows that intertwined like corals. He blinked hard and brushed away the frost on his eyelids. He realized that they were frozen flames, balls of dead fire. The coldness deepened. His clothes had long been torn and peeled off, revealing his majestic chest. His skin was frozen and cracked. Blood had already solidified inside and did not flow out. It was like the dead fire in the glacier, but also like lotus flowers, red and enchanting. This was the depths of hell. In the increasing pain, he gradually forgot to count how many layers there were, and only numb endurance was left. The indigo ghost hid far away outside the glacier and sighed with some pity. This is the end. This hell of 8 cold and 8 heat was the graveyard of countless evil spirits. When they were completely numb, they would be completely frozen and then stay here forever, until one day they would be blown into ice by the cold wind, or they would be burned to ashes by the wildfire. He could not help but wish again. All right, let's stop here. This was hell. Giving up all hope, death was the best ending. However, Li Qingshan was unwilling to give up hope. Unwilling to stop, he continued forward. His bare feet stepped on the hard frozen ground, as if he was stepping on countless sharp blades. The red lotuses around him bloomed even bigger, and wisps of cold air penetrated into his body. Instead, he felt much more clear-headed. He chose the furthest glacier and strode forward. The chilly wind froze his eyes, turning them into 2 gray balls of ice. However, his footsteps did not have the slightest bit of hesitation. He had already clearly outlined the appearance of the ice mountain in his mind, and he continued forward until he ran between the glaciers, swallowing the cold wind all the way, eating ice and drinking snow, falling and climbing up if he could see. He would find that the glacier was still out of reach, not even a step closer. Perhaps he didn't care. It looked like he just didn't want to stop. An indescribable feeling welled up in the indigo ghost's heart as it asked, "Why bother?" Li Qingshan's eardrums had long been frozen, so he couldn't hear anything. He didn't have to listen to the mournful sound of the wind, so he just waved his strong and powerful arms and strode forward with his long and strong legs. Stepping over the hard frozen ground, he stepped onto a vast frozen lake. A gust of wind blew away the snow on the surface of the ice, and countless dead flames froze beneath his feet, dazzling like coral. Suddenly, with a crack, the frozen lake split apart, forming a long valley of ice. He couldn't hear or see, nor did he have any magic power. He fell into the ice valley defenselessly. The frozen dead flames suddenly came to life, dancing wildly like fire snakes, warming his cold body. The temperature continued to rise, and he sweated until there was not a single drop of water on him. Then he was burned to ashes inch by inch, and before he fell to the bottom of the valley, he was blown away by the hot wind. The indigo ghost was looking into the distance, and he completely understood one thing. He hadn't been overwhelmed by the pain, and he wouldn't stop here. Soon, he was reborn from the ashes and trembled in the cold wind. His flesh bloomed with red lotuses again, and before his eyeballs froze, he took a deep look at the furthest glacier and began a new round of running. Eldest senior brother, eldest senior brother. Lu Tian tried to wake Li Qingshan up. Not long after, Li Qingshan's eyelashes trembled slightly, and he slowly opened his eyes. As expected, he woke up. He looked at Lu Tian, and his eyes were filled with smoke, as if a lifetime had passed. There was still the reflection of the glacier in his eyes, and his lips trembled as he asked, "How long has it been?" 3 days. Only 3 days? Li Qingshan felt that many years had passed. He believed that this was not just an illusion caused by the pain, but the laws of hell at work. Not only could he not stay out of it, but it also made this trip to hell even more difficult, because the pain he experienced in an instant was the superposition of many days in hell. Although he woke up, the nightmare continued. Ice and fire constantly intertwined, and the flesh that was frozen and cracked in the cold turned to ashes in the heat. It kept going, and he suffered endlessly. Eldest senior brother, you... Lu Tian immediately understood. His yang spirit was still in hell, enduring all sorts of torture. Li Qingshan pressed down on his knees and propped himself up with difficulty. He swatted away Lu Tian's hand that wanted to support him and made his way out the door. When he pushed open the door, he turned around. "Don't tell anyone." His gaze drifted about, and his voice was tired and weak. It was not threatening at all. However, Lu Tian felt a great pressure, as if he was facing fate itself. He lowered his head deeply. "Yes, sir." The corner of Li Qingshan's lips twitched. He seemed to smile. "Thanks." He vanished through the door. Phew! Lu Tian exhaled deeply and collapsed on the ground. Li Qingshan staggered into the dark nether dwelling. With a great splash, he fell into the water heavily. He used the spirit turtle transformation and suppressed all of his feelings. Only then did he manage to recover a sliver of rationality. "No, I can't maintain this state for too long. I have to go to ruins, and as soon as possible." His willpower far surpassed that of regular people, but it was not limitless. Once it exceeded the limits of what he could endure, he would go completely mad or even die. Before that, he had to make a choice as soon as possible and completely sever the connection between his main body and his yang spirit, or he would definitely collapse. there was an extremely great risk hidden within this. Once he lost control of his yang spirit, it was possible for it to completely split apart. It could even become an enemy of his main body in an attempt to replace him. That would be a terrifying opponent who grasped all of his secrets. This was nothing new in the world of cultivation. As a result, many cultivators condensed a second or third soul nascence, followed by multiple yin and yang spirits. Although it could greatly increase their cultivation speed and make them invincible in battle, it had always been a taboo, something that the orthodox path of cultivation did not accept. However, Li Qingshan was not worried. Instead, he felt like this was for the best. Ruins End might be even more dangerous and unpredictable than the Naraka realm. If he failed, at least there would be a sliver of hope for him to continue forward. As a result, he activated the formation he had prepared a long time ago. In that instant, deep blue light shone, and a whirlpool appeared on the surface of the water. It gradually expanded and deepened until it formed a black hole in the depths of the sea. The water level rapidly plummeted, sucked into the hole. It had to be mentioned that the bottom of the dwelling was connected to the ocean. The water level was level with the ocean. The black hole sucked away. Who knew how many tons of water in a single moment? This was all water to Ruins End. Without any hesitation, he leapt into the huge whirlpool. Before he was swallowed up by the black hole, he and the yang spirit in the hell of oblivion chanted at the same time. Good luck. To be continued. Chapter 1544. In the hungry ghost realm, Little and was currently cultivating in Blooming City. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and discovered in shock that his connection with Li Qingshan had been completely severed. He had even lost contact with the skull prayer beads he had placed on him. He immediately stopped cultivating and returned to his dwelling. He picked up a fragment of a shattered formation and looked at the rapidly rising water level. He immediately understood that Li Qingshan had already gone to Ruins End. He could not help but frown. Something major must have happened, or he would not have left without saying goodbye. He stared at the gloomy, deep-sea water and intertwined his fingers. You have to come back. I will be waiting for you, no matter how long it takes, until death separates us. In that moment, all of the pain vanished, as well as all of the colors and sounds. Submerged in the boundless black water, perhaps because of the spirit turtle transformation, he did not feel cold at all. Instead, he felt warm, like a wanderer who had gone through all the hardships in a foreign land, returning to the homeland of his dreams. Phew! Having distanced himself from the ice and fire of hell, he could not help but exhale deeply. The feeling was far too difficult to endure. If he had a choice, he would not even be willing to endure it for a second. He even began to wonder, I wonder if the me in hell can endure it. A cold thought flashed through his head. If I can endure it, then I'll live. If I can't, then I'll die. His rationality, which had almost descended into madness from the pain, rapidly recovered. He was calmer than ever before, just like the boundless black water around him. He extended his head out of the turtle shell. It was like a dragon's head, yet also like a lion's head. He turned his head left and right, observing his surroundings, but he could not see or hear anything. He did not encounter the pressure and rejection he was expecting. The world transformed from the primordial spirit. Turtle did not seem to hold any hostility towards him. A spirit turtle with an impure bloodline at all. The black water wrapped around him gently, which instead made him feel very comfortable and safe. Compared to the chaos of the mortal world and the agony of hell, this place was basically heaven. This was the homeland of the spirit turtle. His bloodline was not pure enough. But after using the spirit turtle transformation, it was 70 to 80% pure at the very least. Maybe that spirit sovereign Guai Hai was just trying to scare me. But where am I supposed to find that prisoner of ruins end? Li Qingshan extended his limbs. Swaying lightly, he dived down. Wherever he went, the black water automatically parted without any resistance. After diving for an unknown amount of time, he was still surrounded by boundless black water. There wasn't a speck of dust or a mayfly in sight. He used mystic light illumination. With the improvement of the spirit turtle transformation, this innate ability could easily illuminate 500 kilometers away. However, he quickly retracted his divine ability because wherever the profound light shone, there was only black water. He didn't even need to use his eyes here, let alone his innate divine powers, because there was nothing to see. At least there were stars shining in the endless void, and each star was a world. There was also the existence of the void-devouring beasts. Each one of them was the embryonic form of a world. Even though it was a bit scary, at least it was not as boring. He swam for an unknown amount of time. He couldn't wait for a strange deep-sea beast to come and fight with him. He could not help but recite a poem. Sinkhole's end, you are all water. Oh, Qingshan, you have 4 legs. He suddenly realized something. Perhaps he was not diving deep, but rising because of the existence of the earth. No matter how deep the ocean, there would always be a bottom. But in this sinkhole's end, there was neither earth nor sky, so there was neither up nor down. The depths of hell and the depths of the sinkhole sounded similar, but they were not the same thing. At least hell has a floor. I just have to go straight down. But which part of this is considered deep? Not only could he not determine up or down, because there was no point of reference, he could not even distinguish north from south. No matter which direction he went, there was only endless black water. Then where should he go? He could not help but fall into deep thought. As he thought, he yawned and suddenly felt very tired. Perhaps it was because enduring that hellish torture had used up too much of his willpower. Sleepiness spread like a tide, drowning him in the blink of an eye. Even the hard turtle shell seemed to be a little soft. He had never felt so tired, even when he was reborn as a baby. He shook his head and tried to stay awake, but he could not help but think, maybe I should sleep for a while, just a little. He retracted his head and limbs back into the shell, and his eyelids gradually closed. Only a turtle shell was left in the black water, neither floating nor sinking. It was as if a voice was saying to him, "Child, take a rest. You are too tired. You are home. It is very safe here. No one can hurt you anymore." I am home. In a trance, he thought of the misty clouds on the village viewing platform, the seemingly fake but real hometown in the endless distance, and the 2 familiar faces that were growing older by the day. He could not help but say softly, "Dad, Mom, how are you? I miss you so much." He could not help but retract his body deeper into the turtle shell, feeling a pain that he had not felt in a long time. Compared to any punishment in hell, it was insignificant, but it easily broke through all his defenses, like a needle piercing his heart. When he first came to this world, he suffered this kind of pain every night, and it was not easy to break free. He thought he had forgotten everything, but it turned out that he had not. As a result, he came to a realization. What made him tired was not just the torture of hell, but everything he had experienced after coming to this world. As his thoughts flowed, various scenes flashed through the turtle shell on his back. Everything from the past was vivid in his mind, quietly replaying in the black water. The struggle for survival when he was a child, the killing in the Jianghu when he was young, and when he grew up and stepped onto the path of cultivation, the killing became more and more intense, turning into war. The war between gods and demons in his heart never stopped. Pride, humiliation, hatred, fury, fear, slaughter. Even when he was singing and drinking, his heart was stretched taut. After he finished singing and sobered up, he had to hurry to cultivate and fight. He could not stop because once he stopped, he would feel tired. He would want to rest and enjoy himself, and he would probably not want to go forward anymore. However, no matter how long he tried, he only seemed to sink deeper. He had already become so powerful, becoming the first senior brother of the Myriad Phenomenon sect, standing above all living beings. He was countless times more powerful than the sallow and skinny young man from Crouching Ox Village. Not only did he not get a chance to catch his breath, but he was also faced with many difficulties, and the path became even more dangerous. The tortures of hell, the black water of ruins, and the enemies he could not defeat, and the blood oath he could not escape from. He had hope in despair, and he had to fight in desperate situations. Just what was the meaning of a life like this? Beyond the 9 heavens, Brother Ox's enemies can cut off one of his horns and suppress all the great saints. Even if I reach beyond the 9 heavens and fight alongside him, how useful can I be? After all, I'm just a mortal. Whatever, I don't want to think so much. I'll just sleep. I'll think about it when I wake up. At this moment, he vaguely heard a familiar voice echoing repeatedly in his heart. You have to come back. You have to come back. A pale white face appeared on the turtle's shell. She was handsome and dressed in silk. She was only around 6 or 7 years old. Just like him, she had lost her home, and even her life had been taken away. He had once shed tears for her, and he had sworn to take her back to her home. That was actually the home he wanted to return to. However, she did not choose to go back. Instead, she abandoned everything and continued forward with him. In an instant, her face appeared on every piece of the turtle shell. There was both the past and the present. There was Whitebone, and there was also a beautiful face. All of them were close. That was his only family in this world, little and no, I can't sleep yet. She's still waiting for me. He opened his eyelids that felt like they weighed a ton and did his best to break free from his drowsiness. He felt a lingering fear. Just now, if he fell asleep, he would sleep for over a century at the very least, and everything would be over. By the time he woke up, he might have already reached the 9th layer of the spirit turtle transformation, but he would have become a pure spirit turtle. He would no longer have any ambition to go beyond the 9 heavens. Even when he was subjected to the torture of hell, he had never become so weak. The pain only sharpened his fighting spirit, while the nothingness of ruins and constantly ate away at his will. It was not exactly hostility, but it was even more terrifying than hostility. No, perhaps this was the deepest form of hostility. The hostility of the world also required a certain object to rely on. For example, the hungry ghost realm needed a ghost immortal to deal with little and, however, there was only the silent black water and boundless nothingness in Ruin's End. There was nothing to rely on. The reason why it was so mysterious and terrifying was because Ruin's End constantly assimilated all external objects into itself. If they possessed the bloodline of a spirit turtle, perhaps they could be assimilated into a spirit turtle, but if they were any other race, they would be obliterated in nothingness. As he possessed the bloodline of a spirit turtle, the assimilation was even deeper. Fatigue continued to surge over him like the tide. The nothingness seeped into his bones through the black water. He gritted his teeth and circulated his powers, releasing a ring of resplendent light. It expanded silently in the black water, only gradually dimming after reaching over 50 kilometers away. He hoped that the prisoner of Ruin's End could see it. However, in the boundless black water, the light was so tiny that it was not even comparable to a firefly. It was quickly swallowed by the darkness again. He unfurled his limbs and swam forward. He had to move forward no matter what. Afterwards, he released the light again. It was even more dazzling than last time, but against the backdrop of deep darkness, it seemed even dimmer for some reason, like a weak, twinkling star. He constantly moved forward, flashing time and time again. Perhaps it was not so that anyone could see it, but so that he could illuminate himself in the deepest darkness and fight against nothingness. If the world was pitch black, then he would shine by himself. Even if hope did not exist, as long as he gazed at this star, he could continue forward. Chapter 1545. Good luck. In the depths of hell, between the glaciers, there was a wish. He severed the last connection and fell completely into hell. In an instant, the pain eased a lot. His mind broke, free from the numbness, and he reconsidered his situation. For ordinary cultivators, the yang spirit was essentially formed from the soul and the condensation of a lifetime's cultivation. Everyone had a soul. After qi refinement cultivation and successful foundation establishment, they could condense a golden core. Then a nascent soul, a yin spirit, a yang spirit, a primordial spirit, until they became perfected immortals. The cultivation world had always valued the soul and looked down on the body. Buddhists even regarded the body as a stinking bag. Even if the body was destroyed, the soul could still be reincarnated. Cultivators with the yin spirit and yang spirit could even be reborn through possession. When one reached the primordial spirit realm, it did not matter even if he did not have a body. It was just that his status was not comparable to that of a human immortal. However, if his soul was destroyed, everything would be over. Because of Li Qingshan's cultivation of the 9 transformations of demons and gods. Especially after refining the small world in his body, it didn't matter even if his yang spirit was completely destroyed. His soul would naturally gather in the small world. All he needed to do was make a copy of his life experience in the small world. Although the two of them had lost contact, they still had the same experiences, emotions, thoughts, and fate because the information they had was completely the same. Therefore, there was no question of, who am I? He was Li Qingshan. It did not matter who was real or fake. All that mattered was who was stronger or weaker. I have Ox Head Apang as a guide. With Brother Ox's arrangements, it at least proves that there is a chance of this path. But the ultimate is uncertain. That 9-tailed fox, Sumi Rao, as a guide is terrible. Maybe it's a dead end. Therefore, I have to prepare for the worst. If I can't return from the ultimate, I have to recultivate the 9 transformations of demons and gods and continue on the path to the 9 heavens. No, this is not the worst situation. Although I am a good guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes, it does not mean that I will not betray the revolution. But it doesn't mean that they won't betray the revolution. Once that happens, I must destroy them with my own hands. He was constantly destroyed and reborn between ice and fire. His thoughts were as cruel and resolute as ice and fire. Even if the enemy in front of him was himself, he would still kill him. I hope my boy will not disappoint me. Li Qingshan slowed down and continued to walk towards the glacier in the distance. His footsteps became more determined. He had never placed his hopes on anyone, not even his other self. Perhaps the will to self-destruct had never completely disappeared. It was only to carry out the will of the self. The indigo ghost looked over from afar, his heart trembling. It felt like some indescribable change had taken place in his body. After looking carefully for a while, he suddenly realized that he was approaching the iceberg in the distance. Although he didn't walk very fast, but he was indeed getting closer step by step. What happened? Unknowingly, differences had already arisen. They were all Li Qingshan, but they were no longer the same Li Qingshan. Different environments would have a great impact on people. The ultimate and hell were two completely opposite environments. Even in the same environment, there would still be differences. Whether it was the yin spirit or the yang spirit, they would definitely be affected by the physical body, just like mortals would be affected by all kinds of desires. But the physical body was a kind of shackle and also a kind of maintenance. Ghosts were the easiest to be distorted. This was also the case for powerful cultivators. If Chao Qianjiao didn't have a physical body, she would definitely be devoured and assimilated by the power of the black tortoise. It would be impossible for her to survive the sixth heavenly tribulation. The pros and cons were hard to describe, but one thing was certain. The stronger the physical body, the deeper the impact. Li Qingshan had all kinds of god-fiend bloodlines. Each bloodline contained a strong will. Although they formed a certain balance with each other, the impact on the yang spirit was still very deep. And now, this influence was gradually disappearing, like the sunset glow of dusk dimming bit by bit. When he suddenly looked back, it was already night. If he cultivated the same cultivation method and walked the same path, he might be able to bridge this difference. But he cultivated the Book of Freedom and the 9 transformations of demons and gods, which were completely different cultivation methods. Even he himself couldn't predict what the consequences would be. Under these circumstances, the differences would only grow deeper and deeper for regular cultivators. The end result would definitely lead to a split, forming completely different paths. Since Li Qingshan had already treated himself as an imaginary enemy and was prepared to accept the worst outcome, he obviously did not care about a split. Instead, he felt very at ease. He even had the time to admire the magnificent iceberg and the magnificent death fire. He was still unable to use any of his powers, but the iceberg in the distance was no longer so unreachable. As he advanced, he deduced the reason behind this. He had a vague guess. During his 20-odd years in heaven, he had read through all the records, especially the knowledge related to the Book of Freedom. He had used the spirit turtle transformation to carry out an in-depth analysis. At the same time, he had quite a lot of conversations with Spirit Sovereign Guihai. The old turtle was still very attentive to matters related to the heavenly scripture of all. He was the first person to cultivate the heavenly scripture of freedom. He did not have the experience of others to reference, so he had to put everything into practice himself. According to the research of the 2 turtles, the heavenly scripture of freedom might be different from other heavenly scriptures. It might even be the exact opposite. He had to abandon his body at critical moments and voluntarily choose to disintegrate so that he could break free from this stinking skin. Otherwise, he would not be able to attain true, great freedom. His comprehension of the Tao of freedom had already reached an extremely high level many years ago, even before the battle of the demon domain. However, after condensing his yang soul again, he had not made any progress in the past few years. This was very likely the reason. However, this was just a deduction at the end of the day. No cultivator would willingly abandon their body. Without a body, it was very easy for them to go crazy and suffer from chi deviation. Even after undergoing 6 heavenly tribulations, the status of undead immortals was nowhere close to that of human immortals. If Chao Qianjiao had failed to protect her body back, then she probably would not even have been able to become the head of the 6 tribulations. It was even more impossible for him to abandon his body. The 9 transformations of the demonic and divine held much greater significance to him than the heavenly scripture of freedom. He had also been focused on the spirit turtle transformation the entire time, so he had no time to test this theory. However, the affairs of the world were unpredictable. His current state was no different from disintegrating. There was not even a single connection between his yang soul and his body. Blessings were always accompanied by misfortunes, and misfortunes were always accompanied by blessings. This separate trip could also be an opportunity for them. My strength is far greater than mine. If I betray the revolution, I really won't be my opponent. However, if I can refine a soul and become a human immortal, I'll be able to compete with me. Not bad. To be continued. P.S. Chapter 1546. In the silent ruins, end, Li Qingshan foresaw this malice. He understood his own temperament. His stubbornness and arrogance would probably become even more violent once he lost the restraints of the body of a demonic god. He had never understood himself as he did now. In the home of the spirit turtle, his ability to think had become extraordinarily powerful, reaching an unbelievable level. Ordinary people could only observe the undulations above the surface of the sea when faced with the tremendous amount of information in their memories. Only when they thought deeply about certain things could they delve below the surface of the sea and gain insight into part of their memories, but there were unavoidably limitations. This limitation protected humans from mental breakdowns. If they saw an apple fall to the ground and immediately thought of gravity, countless formulas and laws, the contents of several books would surge out at the same time. Their brains would explode with a bang. As a result, the human mind was more like a flashlight, constantly shining around in the darkness. Then, they would forcefully piece together a complete picture from the blurry afterimages. It was inevitable that they would be filled with a lot of imagination. The more blurry and distant the memories were, the more fake and distorted they were. He had no choice but to admit those lost histories a monster were constantly tampered that was different from ordinary by wishful thinking. He possessed reality a strong instinct forever sink for self-destruction. Into the darkness. But furthermore, he would not cater to anyone, always the hardest even if to that person was him. The so-called knowing yourself became almost and impossible. The victor is strong. It became an defeating oneself and destroying oneself. However, the destiny of the turtle did not have such really deviated from each other. It was like a huge light bulb, different paths. Although the range of its illumination was also limited, survival and destruction to make a judgment, to see whose path there was no fake reality. Yes. Furthermore, only self-betrayal could reflect on itself at any time. He made his decision. It was clear and bright. And indifferently. It was not the so-called high intelligence back of his mind. Nor was it like a this was not the reason that could perform a tremendous amount of calculation. The premise of everything in a short period of time. That he could leave the ruins. Instead, it was a completely different. There was no need to mention anything. It was simultaneous. He glowed without any order. The rings gradually. It was a systematic, this kind of comprehensive understanding. A lot of energy, and in the instant he saw the more fall to the ground. The ruins there was no need to convert it into complicated not only would the power or numbers not dissipate, he could but it could also easily absorb the endless power of gravity of the in his sea of consciousness. It was enough to support at the same time in the ruins. It included the meaning to himself. However, when Li Qingshan saw through his entire self, he could see it contained a lot of information, of memories. The will, all the details were vivid in his mind. Would desire, accelerate the assimilation of his will. Fear, weakness, once the assimilation behind every emotion, irreversible. The motivation after a certain point, every he would decision. Still fall into a deep sleep with such a foundation. The result of there was no choice. Need for he was any prophecy. But when he knew conclusion can be drawn, he had already found a solution. I or in other words, I would definitely judge him. True goal if I judged him during the 20-odd years he spent I would destroy him at all costs. He just like how I fought against the incarnation of the demonic god, the spirit turtle, even if I had to die together with him. One of them was called there was no absolute for compromise. There was nothing special about it. Was intolerable. It could only completely solidify his ability to destroy him, preventing all inner demon spirit interfering was a loss for him. If the spirit was equivalent to losing a kind of final radiance, and his overall strength had declined, then absolute he was one step away from the sixth, as expected, heavenly tribulation. He carried out the 4 words me, it was the exact opposite to the very end. I had broken free from the shackles of the fiend god's body, useless in the ruins as an ordinary human cultivator. As this was the homeland of the spirit turtle, I was only one step away from the primordial spirit turtle. Heavenly tribulation was the true, absolute will. The tribulation, even pure-blooded spirit turtles had to accept assimilation. He would be a human immortal spirit turtle, all of his using the innate ability of the spirit turtle carelessly to fight instead. Accelerate the assimilation. No one would be able to help him, no matter what he did. He had to face the assimilation was unavoidable, like dripping water wearing through a rock. It changed everything bit by bit. As a result, he did not limit himself to that. Instead, he studied the innate ability of the spirit turtle from all angles and found a solution. First, he created a mirror clone with Watermirror's image. Then he began to fully understand himself, backing up all of his memories and information. He solidified them with absolute will and stored them in the mirror clone. This made him seem like his soul had left his body. The figure of a spirit turtle was attached to him, following him around. Afterwards, he began absorbing the power of Ruin's End, recovering his strength while accepting assimilation. Once the main body was about to fall into a deep sleep, he would immediately activate the mirror avatar and merge with the main body. He would awaken his spirit with absolute will and use his lifetime of memories to reweave his consciousness and create a new mirror avatar. As long as he constantly repeated this process, he could avoid being assimilated and return to his starting point constantly. Although, in reality, it was equivalent to being assimilated countless times. Compared to the mirror clone's absolute will, all of his main body's changes became so-called inner demons. They would be suppressed and shattered after colliding with each other, and then they would begin anew. This was the only way he could think of to avoid being assimilated by Ruin's End. Of course, this cycle could not continue forever. From the beginning of the first cycle, he had already expected this. Every time he suppressed the inner demons, a portion of his memory would be lost in the collision. Furthermore, it would be completely destroyed, unable to be backed up or retrieved, forever lost. Depending on the depth of the memory, the most insignificant memories would be the first. Perhaps it was a third-rate novel he had read, or perhaps it was a joke he had told. In the past 20 years in heaven, he had accumulated enough memories to use as a sacrifice. However, if this continued, his memories would become less and less, and he would gradually touch the most core and important memories. He had to find that prisoner of Ruin's End before he lost all of his memories and destroyed them. Otherwise, he would forget everything, including Brother Ox, Little, and himself. P.S. After the habitual pain, another part of his memory was lost. The 108th time his mirror image overlapped with his main body. He could not remember a single book of the mountains and seas of books in the sky, including the unfettered tome. That was the only title left. How long had it been? A year and a half? Or 8 to 10 years? He couldn't remember anymore? It was easy to calculate. The time of every overlap was basically the same, but now he had even forgotten about this. Moreover, he would forget it every time he tried to recollect it. This was because memorizing such information was completely meaningless. Instead, it would weaken his willpower. Time became a blurry concept. The 3,528th time was not like he was spinning. Instead, the entire sinkhole was spinning. The deathly stillness was just an illusion. In reality, it was a huge whirlpool that was spinning at an extremely high speed. But just like how humans could not feel the rotation of the Earth, this whirlpool was too big. Moreover, his body maintained the same speed as the whirlpool, so he did not feel that he was moving on his own. He thought he was advancing along a precise trajectory, but in reality, he was constantly approaching the center of the whirlpool. Of course, he was not certain whether this was real or just an illusion. With the loss of a large number of memories, everything became unclear. Who am I for the 7,759th time? He slowly closed his eyes. He had reached the 9th layer of the spirit turtle transformation. Everything was over. He had already sacrificed his name, but there was still no response. Before despair could even surge out, it began to recede rapidly. He was as calm as he could be, and as tired as he could be. With his final bit of willpower, he sent out a final message and fell into an eternal slumber. Who am I? Suddenly, a voice barged into his sea of consciousness. It was like a landslide, like thunder, like the roar of a million lions, rousing him from his slumber. He could not help but shrink back into his turtle shell. The voice continued to reverberate violently. Even the turtle shell trembled, as if it had become some kind of musical instrument. Li Qingshan widened his eyes. Ecstasy surged through his heart. Although he had almost forgotten why he was ecstatic, he still felt happy. Have I found it? The silent, black water surged violently, forming countless whirlpools and streams. Every single whirlpool and stream was hundreds or thousands of times larger than him. Even a demon emperor would be torn to pieces easily. However, he was fearless. With the complete completion of the spirit turtle transformation, he had already become a pure-blooded spirit turtle. Using every whirlpool as a marker and every stream as a path, he sped up into the depths of Ruin's End. Suddenly, a lofty, rising and falling shadow appeared before him. It was like a huge, crouching beast coming from the endless darkness and going into the endless darkness. Who knew how many thousand kilometers it was? It's a mountain. He had never thought there would be a day when he would be so surprised and so close to a mountain. Not only was this Ruin's End, but he had also lost all of his memories regarding mountains, including his own name. This was equivalent to the first mountain he had ever seen in his life. He approached it slowly. The tremendous sound originated from this mountain. The jagged, strange rocks and towering rocks were already inches away, but he did not discover anything else. Apart from mountains, there were only rocks. He used the profound light illuminates all and scanned the entire mountain range carefully. He discovered a few words seemed to be engraved on the most majestic mountain among the mountains. He approached it and took a look. As it turned out, it was 3 huge words that spanned several thousand meters. The name seemed rather familiar, but he could not recall where he had heard it before. He still could not find anything alive, so he asked loudly, "Where are you?" A voice 1,000,000 times louder than his own replied, "I'm beneath your feet." Rumble! The black water surged and rose and fell, producing countless ocean currents. Li Qingshan powered the spirit turtle's profound shell and barely blocked the sound waves. He gazed at the mountains and came up with an idea. "You're crushed beneath the mountain?" He found this setting to be very familiar. He could not help but look around. Should there be some kind of golden sticker or something in the surroundings that he needed to remove so that he could continue westward and reach the peak of his life? The voice laughed aloud instead, shaking the mountains. It replied with a question, "How am I crushed?" Li Qingshan was taken aback. This was Ruin's End. Even this mountain should be floating in the black water, so it should not be crushed. Then you're sealed in the center of the mountain? You're on my back. Surely not. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He pushed the profound light illuminates all to the limit and tried to view the mountain range that stretched for several thousand kilometers as a single entity. Only then did he discover that it was like a crouching lion, and the mountain he stood on was the lion's towering back. He had achieved the major accomplishment of the spirit turtle transformation, so he was already relatively large, but he seemed like a flea on the lion's back. Rumble! The lion raised its head, causing the mountains to rise and fall. It let out a huge yawn, its two long teeth like two inverted peaks. It turned around and looked at him. Its brownish-yellow eyes were like two scorching suns, immediately dispelling the endless darkness. "Little guy, who are you?" I'm not some little guy. Can you keep your voice down?" Li Qingshan knew what he was facing, but he did not feel any fear. Instead, he felt a great sense of familiarity. "I can't, little guy." The lion rejected him without any hesitation. The corner of Li Qingshan's mouth twitched. This bastard lion. Clearly, it had no awareness of being a prisoner. The lion twitched its ears. "Pay attention to your thoughts. I can hear you. And who are you?" Li Qingshan vaguely guessed the lion's identity. He still managed to retain this information. "I forgot," the lion announced proudly. "But Big Brother once called me a stupid lion, so you can just call me foolish old man." Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. What was there to be proud of about being called a stupid lion? Or maybe the one to be proud of was that Big Brother. There was no need for him to explain anything. This person should have seen everything from him. But why did he find the word foolish old man a little familiar? Forget it. If I'm not wrong, you are the great saint of moving mountains, Lion Camel King. Lion Camel King glanced at the three words Lion Camel Ridge. Yes, this is it. Chapter 1548. The Lion Camel King continued. "But little guy, you still have to call me Yugong. This is an order." Li Qingshan hated the word order, so he nodded. "Okay, Lion Camel King." "Yes, Lion Camel King." "No problem, Lion Camel King." "Yes, Lion Camel King." "Lion King." Yugong. The silent and boundless black water suddenly became noisy. The big lion and the little turtle stared at each other, one majestic and awe-inspiring, his aura covering the mountains. The other was expressionless and unmoved. The lion did not fly into a rage and kill the turtle. Instead, he insisted on correcting the turtle's title. After many arguments, he suddenly laughed. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. His voice was like a landslide of thunder, but it was filled with joy. Perhaps he had been lonely for too long in this black water prison. Li Qingshan squinted his eyes. "Hey, don't you think this is childish?" "You are the one who is childish. Little guy," the Lion Camel King said word by word. His eyes were as bright as the sun as he stared at Li Qingshan. "You are carrying the blood oath of Styx. You don't have much time left." He lowered his mountain-like head. "If you want to compete with me—" He smiled proudly. "Thou shalt lose." Li Qingshan sighed. The difference in their abilities was like heaven and earth. He was not surprised that the lion could see through this. But it was true that the river Styx was getting closer and closer. He did not have much time left. "Then, stupid Mr. Lion, how can I get you out?" He looked around, still trying to find something that looked like gold. He had a feeling that there should be something. The Lion Camel King laughed again. "Little guy, you really know how to joke." "Bastard, I'm leaving." "Don't underestimate yourself. You are too weak. Of course, you don't have this kind of power. You are still too young. If you want to break the ultimate, you can only ask for my beloved second sister's help." The Lion Camel King looked up and said in a respectful tone. Li Qingshan was shocked. "Second sister?" "The great sage of the ocean cover, the Dragon Demon King." "That's right. She is also your beloved second sister." Li Qingshan felt a bit mushy. "I don't know her." "You are the one chosen by Big Brother. Of course you are our brother." The Lion Camel King extended a claw. He lightly knocked on Li Qingshan's turtle shell. Li Qingshan tried his best to resist this intimate gesture. He shook his head, helplessly. "It's my honor." Then should I call you fourth brother? No, call me Yugong. All right. Li Qingshan completely gave up. Then where is second sister? I don't know. Then stay here obediently. But my dear fifth brother must know that he has a very good ear. You know everything. The Lion Camel King shook his two small mountain-like ears, expressing his approval. Great sage ventilation, raging monkey king. Li Qingshan suddenly understood why Brother Ox had arranged for that ox head, Ophang, to bring him to the depths of hell. Judging from the current situation, all the great sages were being suppressed. If he wanted to release them, he had to at least know where they were. The raging monkey king was the most important part. It all depended on whether his yang spirit was strong enough to reach the depths of hell and meet the great sage ventilation. If his yang spirit failed, he would have to go to hell again. But before that, he had to solve the blood oath of the Styx River. So he told the demon god Cheongchi about the bet. The bet was not about defeating Cheongchi, but pushing down his Qingqi mountain. He believed that the great sage moving mountain would definitely have a way. The Lion Camel King did not disappoint him. That's easy. He opened his abyss-like mouth and spat out a palm-sized token. It landed in front of Li Qingshan. The token was simple and crude, with a simple U character carved deeply on it. There was no aura coming from it. It looked like it was carved from an ordinary rock. Mountain-moving token. This is my natal item. With this token in your hand, moving mountains and filling seas will be a piece of cake. Li Qingshan accepted the mountain-moving token carefully. It was crucial for him to defeat Cheongchi. The Lion Camel King continued. Your cultivation is too weak. You probably can't unleash much of its power. I'll give you another 3 mountains in case of emergencies. He shook his body. 3 mountains immediately flew up from his back, landing in front of Li Qingshan. They had all shrunk to the size of a fist, just like 3 fake mountains. However, they were exactly the same as the original mountains in detail. Li Qingshan asked, "What are the names of these mountains?" Wolf Fang Mountain, Skyscraper Ridge, Yellow Cliff Peak. Li Qingshan grabbed the Wolf Fang Mountain and tried to lift it, but it did not budge at all. Who knew how many tens of millions of tons it weighed, let alone the spirit turtle transformation? Even the ox demon transformation could not lift such a weight. The Lion Camel King smiled. You're not the big brother. How can you use brute force? Li Qingshan thought of something. He waved the mountain-moving tablet gently, and the 3 mountains immediately took off, as light as 3 birds. The Lion Camel King reminded, you can only use these 3 mountains once. You won't be able to change them back after using them. That's enough. Li Qingshan nodded. He was only borrowing the Lion Camel King's power, but he already felt like this trip was worth it. Not only did he have an arcane treasure to deal with Cheongchi, but he also had such a powerful technique. The 3 mountains had all been refined by the Lion Camel King. They were not as loose and inconvenient as regular mountains. Instead, they were almost like arcane treasures. They were solid and could be used freely. Even a human immortal would be smashed to smithereens by just 1 hit from it. However, as far as the eye could see, the 3 mountains were only the smallest on the Lion Camel King's back, coupled with the fact that he was almost a mountain himself. The mountain-moving sage lived up to his name. All of this was probably in preparation for the divine war beyond the 9 heavens. It was not something he could do right now. However, he had a feeling that this day would not be too far away. This was the prophecy of a pure-blooded spirit turtle. One day, he would have his own power and become a true great sage. What should I be called? Invincible great sage. Never mind. I'll go back and discuss it with Little, and thinking of Little, and he wanted to go home. Though little and had forgotten who he was, she would definitely remember. Before he left, he asked, "Oh, right, who am I?" The Lion Camel King's face darkened. "You are the seventh. If I remember correctly. The seventh should be equal to the heavens. Shut up." The Lion Camel King was enraged. "Do not mention that traitor's name." The lion roared, the mountains howled, the endless black water churned, and the entire returning ruins was shaken. Li Qingshan was swept up by the black water and slammed into a mountain. The mountain crumbled. It was as if he was facing a terrifying natural disaster. He shouted, "Calm down! Calm down!" The Lion Camel King retracted his thunderous rage, but he was still angry. He gritted his sharp teeth and shouted, "Traitor! Traitor!" Li Qingshan had mixed feelings. "What is going on?" "Don't ask. I don't want to talk about it. Leave." The Lion Camel King suddenly lost interest. He turned his head back and laid lazily on his paws. His ears also drooped down. Li Qingshan was deep in thought and didn't say anything else. He was a real spirit turtle now. Entering and exiting the returning ruins was no longer difficult. A whirlpool appeared in the black water, and just as he was about to enter it, the Lion Camel King said tiredly, "Never mind, you are the eighth." You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.